Sarah in Battersea. Good evening, Sarah.
Hi, Nigel.
So is it right and proper? Is it pragmatic and sensible? Is it good for the economy that free movement continues for a minimum of 2 years after we've left the EU?
Well, thanks. I'd like to ask the question in a slightly different way and answer it in that way.
Okay.
From my perspective, I would love for a hard Brexit to happen, not for the same reasons as you at all. I'd love for that to happen so that finally we could see the real consequences of some of your intentions and some of your goals.
And what is a hard Brexit, Sarah? What does that mean?
So yeah, no, it's true. It means many things. I think it's the kind of Brexit that you have in mind. So no freedom of movement, no ECJ, and so on.
So you mean the Brexit we voted for, Sarah?
Yes, in a way. Exactly.
Thank you. So why do you call it hard Brexit? Why not call it democratic Brexit?
Let's call it that way, fine. I don't want to be into semantics, but the reason why I want that to happen is so that we see what the consequences of all these actions would be. So you wouldn't be in the opposition how you've been all of your life, but you'd actually be in a position of power, and you'd see what happens when you take such decisions. I mean, you know, the world is fully globalized and integrated today. Forget even the freedom of movement. Everything is in a global supply chain. You get out of the EU tomorrow without a deal, everything comes to a stop. And for the UK only.
Well, hang on, Sarah. You're arguing that we're living in a globally interconnected world, and I'm arguing that perhaps the biggest benefit, trade-wise, of Brexit is that we're now free to re-engage fully with the 85% of the world economy that isn't part of the EU.
Yeah, sure. I've heard that many times before from you and from others. I'll take one example. I work in, and I invest in Africa day in, day out. I work for a company that's invested billions in Africa. I can tell you now, so I know what I'm talking about. I can tell you the UK does not want to do trade deals with Africa for many, many reasons. One of them is, do you really think UK customers are going to want to buy Nigerian tomatoes? I mean, Nigeria imports all of its food already. What are they going to export food-wise? What exactly do you expect to trade with Africa?
Well, Africa could sell us all sorts of agricultural products and cut flowers and all sorts of things, and it does sell some of those things into our market already, Sarah. But as you know, as an Africa expert, the EU does everything it can to make it really difficult for Africa to sell any of its produce into Europe.
Africa imports the vast majority of its agricultural produce. They only make very smallholder farming. That's the huge issue in Africa. So what is it that you want to trade with Africa?
Well,
is it people?
I tell you what, fish would be a very good example, Sarah, of an industry that Africa could and should be benefiting from in terms not just of catching but of processing and exporting. But as you well know, a lot of African fish is now caught by the European fleet.
I'll give you another example. You mentioned trade deals with the rest of the world. How about India? Did you know that the Prime Minister of India did a tour of Europe? He came to Spain, he went to France, he went to Germany. Yep. This was 2 months ago, and it even come by the UK. So if the UK was so important, so relevant, wouldn't he have passed by the UK while he was in Europe?
Well, perhaps the UK aren't very good at making people welcome. After all, President Trump has been all over Europe and still hasn't come to the United Kingdom, Sarah.
That is not the reason why the Prime Minister of India didn't come to the UK. The reason why he did it is because he can deal with a market of 500 million people, or he can deal with a country of 60 million people.
But if you want to do a trade deal with the EU, be prepared. Don't hold your breath, because it might take 7 or 10 years. And there are countries, Sarah, all over the world, little countries like South Korea, Singapore, Chile, who actually put the EU to shame when it comes to negotiating trade deals. Sarah, we're never going to agree. You're a big pessimist about what you call a hard Brexit, but we did actually compromise and agree that it was a democratic Brexit.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.